Hello everyone and welcome to iReadit, bringing you your daily dose of the internet for Monday, August 14th, 2017. I am Michael Schwahn. And I am joined by...
Hold on.
Uh-oh. We've already been having connection issues before the show even started, so maybe it just hates us absolutely now.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Welcome, good sir. How are you?
Excellent. I am well. How are you?
I am good. And your name is?
I am Kobe Boatwright.
Welcome, Kobe. Nathan is currently away. He was supposed to go on a date with a potential lady friend yesterday, but due to some circumstances, they were not able to. So he asked me if he could miss the show today to go on a date in the pursuit of love.
It must be done. It must be done.
It must be done, because love conquers all. Please remember, everyone, that we do go live on Facebook Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Alaska time, as well as you can help support this show financially at patreon.com/dailyinternet. If we do have some connection issues, I apologize. Normally we don't have them, but of course the one time that I want to talk to Kobe in an important fashion, rather than just bullshitting about Dungeons & Dragons philosophy or video games, it decides that it doesn't like us.
Dr. Murphy and his damned law. If there was ever somebody you wish you could go back in time and kill, and whatever they discovered would just no longer be valid.
Yeah, but wouldn't it just be still exist? It'd just be undiscovered?
Yeah, that's the problem. You can't change facts just by ignoring the people who told you them.
It reminds me of my high school math teacher who, like, I really enjoyed him. He was a good teacher and all this stuff, but he had one thing that I'm just like, I understand what you're going for, but I really despise that. And oops, sorry, I just punched the microphone. He was talking about how you cannot invent or create math. You only discover something that was not previously discovered, whether it's a new equation or way of processing things.
Which is true. It sort of even makes it funnier how mathematicians see their art a lot more like the artist than like the engineer. Like when mathematicians talk about proofs, they consider it a perfectly legitimate critique of a proof to say that it's just not elegant, it's ugly.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, it felt so irrelevant to me. Like, I don't understand.
But I don't care.
Yeah.
I just can't care.
Of course, that's true for a lot of math, is like, I really don't care. Logarithms, can we just, I don't know, do anything else? Yeah, sure, we can do paragraph proofs. That's not better.
I like the pretty parts of math. I like geometry and set theory, but like calculus or anything with statistics and shit, I'm sure the people who like those things want to jump down my throat, but I like the parts that do shiny, cool, philosophy-relevant shit.
I just want stuff to be applicable, and a large amount of math to the common man is not.
Yeah, not at first, at the very least.
I mean, if you're going to do engineering thing or physicist things or something like that, then yeah, totally. But,
Right, but do you need the third tier of how to square the exponential of the 13th postulate of the... No.
I'm glad that our connection is improving instead of deteriorating.
That's good to hear.
So, are you ready to get into some news, good sir?
Let's get into the news.
That is literally just a link to the show. I tried to post the headline, and it's literally just a URL.
You're not watching us enough. Watch us again.
All right, things are starting off strong.
Ted.
Adam Silver will consider legalizing the use of medical marijuana in the NBA.
Submitted by Ed Hamden to RNBA.
So Adam Silver, who is the current commissioner, president, I forget what his actual title is. He runs the National Basketball Association. Someone approached him and asked him whether he would be open to the idea of allowing players to use medical marijuana while they participate in the NBA. He said he's open to it. And the reason being is that he does recognize that it seems to have a lot of applicable effects for medical purposes, especially pain management. But one, he believes there'd be a lot of complications for the players because right now it's not legal in all states. And two, he hopes that his sport is not so high in the amount of pain the players take that it would be a necessary factor.
You said hi. You know, regardless of whether or not it needs to be used medically, the bottom line is that if there are people from states where it's being treated of as legal, they're going to have to, because one of the ways that these things are going to become popularized for states that don't presently have them is as these organizations decide to come out and say, we've even weighed it relative to our professional sports athletes, and we pick over their bodies with a fine-tooth comb, and we don't think it's a problem. So why do you?
I don't know. And like for the most part, everything that I see, the benefits of allowing marijuana in a society vastly outweigh the detriments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in favor, but I can get that. I think it's just a lot of it is, one, now that we've got a more open research forum, we don't have enough people actually doing the research because that takes money. And then two, there's just so much. I mean, this has been a 60-year-long campaign of fuck this shit, it's the worst thing ever, don't possibly let anybody do it. That's going to take a minute to turn around.
Yeah, well, and I mean, there's still so many people that are so starkly against it, especially if they profit from something that would be hindered by the widespread production of marijuana.
Yep. But I mean, in the case of the NBA, these are people who, like, if you take a look at Snoop Dogg, if I remember right, it's my understanding that when he deals with, like, because obviously the man has been busted for marijuana before, and he's really just so rich he does not care.
Right.
Pays the fine and he moves on. So I mean, in the case of a lot of these basketball players, I wonder if how much, like, aside from the NBA itself, would actually stops them from doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, aside from not being allowed to compete, probably not much.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends on the entirety of the NBA rules, because, I mean, depending on what classification the infraction is for being caught with marijuana,
Right.
it might add up to where, like, even if it's a irrelevant thing, it might still go against them hard enough. Like, like if it counts as like a misdemeanor, and if you have 5 misdemeanors as an NBA player, you're kicked off or something.
Right. Plus, it's the case of, like, it's one thing for, a local business or whatever that's in a state where this is legal in one way or another to allow it, and sort of not have federal forces where, it is technically still federally illegal come after them. It's another thing for an organization like the NBA where the FDA could just see this as the chance to make a statement.
Sure.
To remind people that it's illegal.
Maybe. Who knows? It's one of those things that currently, every time I hear about it or talk about it, I just feel like the dominoes are already falling. They've just are falling slowly right now.
Yeah. I wish they'd pick up momentum, but again, it's a 60-year-long plan of not that. It's going to take a while.
I don't know if it'll take 60 years. I just think I feel like it's more of like a cone of dominoes. So, like,
I mean, that's how long
one,
it's
then
taken.
2, then 3. Oh, sure, yeah. But I feel like we're on year, like, 40 now is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, at the most.
Like, I feel like by around, like, 2025, 2030, it won't necessarily be a topic that we discuss as often anymore.
Well, we've already reached a quorum with, like, a more than half by far, if I remember right, in terms of medical. It's a question of when, like, recreational use, and I think that is, like, you can't really separate the two issues.
Not well enough. Not with how easy it is to... I don't want to, like, throw people under the bus, but essentially fake your way well enough to get on medical.
I mean, look at California, where, I mean, if I've heard right, it pretty much consists of, doctor, I have a headache.
And it's like, cool, here's some bud. So, who knows? Let's move on.
9.
Dog who was dumped over a fence and left to die gets nursed back to health thanks to 8,000 pounds of donations.
Submitted by Ellen C. Scott to Our Uplifting News.
Random
first of all, to whoever did that, fuck you. Just perennially, fuck you.
Well, and, like, here's the thing, first off, by the way, just a complete side tangent, is I really wish the UK would get over themselves, and I can't talk a whole lot coming from America, but I wish they'd get over themselves and just switch over to the euro, because anytime I say anything regarding Great British pounds, it just sounds weird.
Right.
Aside from that, though, so this is the tragic yet happy tale of Wanda. Wanda was a dog who was approximately 2 to 3 years old, who had been thrown over a fence and discovered by a nearby veterinarian worker. She had a severe case of mange, was running extremely high temperature and ear infection, and her eyes were filled with pus. And it took several weeks to cure her back up, but she is back in full health and is doing well.
Well, I mean, a fortunate place to end up where a vet picks you up, or a vet, tech of some sort, it sounds like. $8,000. I mean, on the one hand, that sounds like a lot of money for, a dog's surgery, but then you think of how much human surgery is, and there's not really any more reason why the medical equipment's going to be cheaper. It's just that they have lower, standards, basically, that lets it be somewhat cheaper. But, thank God for random donations. You got to figure that there was at least one relatively rich person in that list who was just like, here's $4,000 because I like dogs.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, also at the same time though, like my brain also went, wow, 8,000 pounds is all it took to completely bring a dog from the edge of life that was suffering from infection and disease. That would have been $80,000 minimum if it was a person.
Oh yeah, no, and a lot of that being insurance, and like I said, just like higher standards of you have to have everything down to the micrometer, basically, in terms of engineering. But I mean, if they were, again, just thank goodness that we've gotten to the point where, because unfortunately, you wind that back maybe even 30 years, and the appropriate response to that would have been a 32-cent bullet.
Well, I mean, just depending on your area, that would still be the response.
Yeah, true.
I mean, so, but...
I mean, I've seen horses put down that way even, in the last 10 years. Although, I mean, to be fair, the truth is that medical bills for animals, for most people who don't meter it out to be the kind of expense that it can be to have a pet, medical bills can get crazy.
Yeah. So, either way, I'm honestly real glad there isn't a video for this one because they always make me cry a lot.
Yeah, those in the arms of an angel. It's time for some sads.
Well, actually, those videos, I'm just like, you're just depressing. Like it's the people that are asking for money with the sob story of like, oh, help us, we're suffering. Like,
right.
People, animals, anything. I'm like, oh, this wears on me real bad. It's the videos, like you always see them shared on Facebook of like they find a dog like in like a garbage can or like in like a straight up a dump, and it's like suffering and has like a twisted up leg that looks like a gnarled tree branch.
Someone picked this up on their cell phone.
Yeah, and then like they carry it away, and you get to see the entire like rehabilitation thing. It's like, it's so beautiful. I do.
And in your case, you already cry over pretty much everything.
It's true. I really do. I'm a sad, emotional thing.
I mean, I do too, but mine is kind of like weird. It'll something completely like legitimately terrible will not hit the mark, and then something random that has no reason to will just be like, have some feels.
And you're like, oh, Tony, hold me. Yeah, totally understand. Totally understand.
8.
Jury orders blogger to pay $8.4 million to ex-Army colonel she accused of rape.
Submitted by deleted to our justice served.
Yeah, I didn't bother even trying to figure out who posted. I just wanted to move on. Yeah, so this is a... I in no way want to discredit rape victims in any way. But, so here's the circumstances that happened here. So this is the story of Colonel David Riggins as well as Susan Shannon of Everett, Washington. So what happened is that both of these two individuals went to West Point back in 1983. No, 86, I'm sorry. So 21 years, nope, 31? I can do math. Yeah, 31 years ago.
There you go.
They were both cadets at West Point. And so she ended up dropping out of West Point, decided and just went to like normal people college and went on with her life that way. He made it through West Point, kept going in the military, made it up to be an officer, did 2 tours of Iraq, went over into the Middle East during the Gulf War back in 1990, and, just military. And then back in 2013, he was up for promotion to go to a 1-star general, which is a brigadier general. So he's up for promotion to become a 1-star general. 13 days after this announcement goes out, she, who runs her own personal blog, starts posting on the blog about how this gentleman raped her back when they were in West Point 31 years ago. Well, I guess at the time it would have been 27 years prior. Because of this, he was denied his promotion, in which case he retired from the military and then promptly sued her for defamation and also basically just ruining his continued military success. After a full review of that, a judge has sided with him, awarding him $8.3 million, of which that breaks down to $3.4 million in compensatory damages for injury to his reputation and lost wages, and $5 million in punitive damages to make sure that nothing like this will ever happen again. Now, in the state where this occurred, Virginia, punitive damages are limited to $350,000, and the compensatory damages will likely be reduced to $2 million.
Well, for most people, odds are this will still at least bankrupt her, which, I think that's perfectly fine.
Well, and, now she is, breaking down about talking like how now she feels like she's a financial slave and all of this different stuff. And, if it is true that it happened, which, I mean, she said that he conducted this act while they were at West Point, which is why she quit, and, he just went on with his merry way for the next, 27 years up until this started to happen. If so, that's really unfortunate, but at the same time, 27 years later, how are you really planning to substantiate anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, any discussions about this always tend to devolve into assuming that if the person you are talking to disagrees with you as to the severity, as to how these people should be treated in cases of false accusation of something so severe, that you are glorifying the horrible act that was the accusation, when of course we're not.
Well,
it seems to me that it's just, if you're going to if you're going to shit on someone's career, and there was no good reason for it, and that's what this seems to boil down to, you should have recompense for that. They should be compensated for that, regardless of what you use to shit on their career.
Well, and that's what's happening. And, I understand that, 30 years ago things were a lot different than they are today, but even, if she would have, when it happened, if she would have immediately went to someone at that point in time and started addressing it then, it would have been much easier to deal with. But it's literally half a lifetime later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember. Don't most cases of that sort? I mean, I'm sure the statute of limitations, if it's there at all, is way longer than that.
I have no idea.
There's a point where you just, how are you going to possibly bring this to trial, and why do it now?
Well,
I'm flabbergasted, sort of to the point where, how could somebody weigh that out and expect it to go well then? Let's even take the case that the court got it wrong and he did. I recognize that many victims don't have the ability to sort of come out about these things until decades afterwards, and it can be awful. But at that point, especially if you know that you don't have a good case, I hate to say it, but probably the best thing you can do is receive as much psychological help as you can get and try and move on.
Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, since then, she's led a very successful life. She went to college, has a good job, has a very successful blog, has 3 kids, a full family. I mean, she's 54.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it has not, don't get me wrong, if it was true, then I'm sure it has affected her. Mm-hmm. But it seems like it has not put her down.
Yeah.
And, one does better to not decide later to make because in this case, now that effectively that's what it has done, whether or not true.
Well, and the thing that makes it even, I don't want to say worse, but if it was under different circumstances, it probably wouldn't have been as bad. But because she didn't come out with it until after he was up for promotion to become a brigadier general, the timing is interesting, because they do an investigation before they give someone, a star. But at the same time, if they would have contacted her privately about it, but she went public on her own with it, which then publicly, that's how he's able to claim the defamation, because she's
Right.
publicly criticizing him for something that happened 27 years ago.
Yep.
So
I mean, it's just not only the wrong way of assuming true, not only the wrong time, but definitely the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the right way to go about it, especially when it's so long ago.
Right. I don't think there is, frankly, or at least not through the. I don't think using the court of public opinion or the actual courts at that point is going to do one any good.
Mm-hmm. So, rough times, rough times.
7,
Indeed.
Chance the Rapper donates 30,000 backpacks to school kids.
Submitted by listening to our news.
So Chance the Rapper, who continues to, just do what we wish everyone that had lots of money would do. I mean, he donated $1 million earlier this year to Chicago Public Schools. This year during the Bud Billiken Parade, he was out on he was out as the Grand Marshal of the city, and he, on his massive float that he had, was just passing out backpacks to kids.
Hell yeah. It's almost like when you have more money than you know what to do with, there's actually a lot of shit you could do with it if you think about it for 5 minutes.
Well, and like I feel like most often you see this in people that didn't have money.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I forget, but there are studies that show people raised rich who become richer don't tend to give as much as people raised poor who become rich.
Yeah. I mean, and in some cases, there's always exceptions to every last little thing. But I
Right.
mean, some people that are raised poor and then become rich just turn into like hyper snobs.
True. At that point, it's like, yeah, I achieved what I always wanted. I guess a lot of it has to do with like, what is their money to them? Is their money like their success, or is their money what they deserve? Because if it's what they deserve, then they're probably not going to give any. They're probably not apt to be charitable.
Mm-hmm.
The people say, I done did good. And it's not only because of me, to some degree, who can recognize that way in which we as human beings in society at all fundamentally live on the backs of our fellow. That's one is more apt to be humble about it.
Sure.
In that case.
Well, either way, to Mr. Chancellor Bennett, I do not listen to your music, but I do appreciate your actions.
Yeah, I know a few people who like your music. Keep doing what you're doing, because fuck yeah.
Jennifer in the chat room says, one small act that can change a life forever, and that is awesome. It's true. Like you don't realize how much just one small good gesture, and it doesn't need to be a large one, just one small positive gesture can completely help someone more than you will ever realize.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you much.
Even though the backpack isn't mine.
Yeah.
And then there's that selfish American logic right there for you.
6,
Stunt driver killed in accident on Deadpool 2 set in Vancouver.
Submitted by Firmacloud to our movies.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I don't know. McLeod? Sure. Don't know. Either way, unfortunately, a stunt driver has died following a tragic accident on the set of Deadpool 2's filming in Vancouver. This was a motorcycle accident. The stunt woman appeared to lose control of their motorcycle, which they drove off the set and crashed through a window pane, were loaded into an advanced life support ambulance that remained on the scene for about 45 minutes, and then the vehicle eventually drove off without lights or sirens, and then they were pronounced dead.
The Deadpool scene, the Deadpool is the kind of movie where its raw irreverence makes one almost want to make a terrible joke here, but A, there's not really one to be made, and B, that just sucks, because, I mean, who likes to hear people dying? Now, granted, you're a stunt driver, you're a stunt worker, you do sort of sign up for that. That doesn't mean it's good when it happens.
Yeah, but normally, like, all of their stunts, they're, like, because they're professionals, are actually really safe.
Yeah, I mean, they're safe enough that even the celebrities that are capable of their own stunts, they often let do their own stunts instead of saying, no, our whole movie is shot if you do this. Absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean, they friggin' let Tom Cruise hang on to the side of a plane.
Yeah. Yeah, no Tom Cruise. A bunch of the actors who you wouldn't think are capable of doing their own stunts. Keanu Reeves, apparently.
Charlize
He's
Theron, Jackie
really
Chan.
good with a gun, like scary good.
Yeah, he's. Yeah. Well, and the last time, at least Jennifer says, stunt people definitely do dangerous stuff, but you rarely hear about them dying. In terms of Vancouver, the last time that someone passed away on a, no wait. Oh, I don't know where WorkSafe BC is, but the last time that someone died on a local shoot for WorkSafe BC was in 1996.
Damn. I mean, yeah. On the whole, I guess when you're doing things where you are having $1 million insurance policies and then some, and obviously people who are doing 23 backflips off of a motorcycle onto a helicopter blade.
More than once.
You probably want to emphasize that it's actually going to be okay, but obviously it's not. It can't always be the truth.
Yep. So right now, as is always the case with any death or severe injury that happens while filming, a full investigation into the matter is being conducted because the stunt driver had already done a few takes and practice runs of driving down the set of stairs on the motorcycle before stopping on the street. But on the final attempt, they zoomed onto the road and through a window. So something went wrong on the final take.
Yeah, and the truth is when you so I've only been on even just any kind of bike once, and it was long enough to learn that if you sort of seize up on them, a lot of the time what can happen is that you'll end up gunning the gas and making it go faster. So the odd thing is that losing control, and of course psychologically they're probably ready for it, but losing control on that, there's the chance that rather than making it better, you can make it worse.
Mm-hmm. So.
Still sad and unfortunate. Nobody wants that to happen.
Ryan Reynolds has addressed the tragedy, saying, "We're heartbroken, shocked, and devastated, but recognize nothing can come close to the grief and inexplicable pain her family and loved ones must feel in this moment. My heart pours out to them along with each and every person she touched in this world." They have not said anything about what will happen with filming, whether it's going to be paused, stopped, moved, etc.
I feel like a pause might be in order, but things like this, one way or another, seldom stop production of bigger projects.
What it might be is whatever they're filming at that moment, at that set, will be paused, and they'll go somewhere else to film something else somewhere else.
Right. Which seems reasonable. Let's just not do this for a while. We'll maybe come back later, maybe even change the scene.
Mm-hmm. So.
5.
Charlottesville.
Here we go.
Okay, so first off, there's 3 separate parts of this we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about what happened and what has happened since then. So if you have not heard of the events of Charlottesville, strap in. So over the last weekend, in Charlottesville, they have a statue of Robert E. Lee, previous general of the Confederate Army back during the Civil War for the United States of America. And the city council for Charlottesville had voted to have that statue removed. And there's a lot of people that didn't like that, to put it very simply. So this weekend, they had a rally regarding that statue and wanting it to not be removed. A very large number of people assembled, and things quickly got out of hand, mostly because a large number of the people that were there in protest of the statue being removed were basically saying white lives matter, white is right, white people, including going so far as several of them donning swastikas, yelling Heil Victory, which, if you do not know, the German phrase that was always reiterated by the Nazis, Sieg Heil, literally means Hail Victory, including several of them also doing the Nazi salute. This obviously upsets lots of people, and a counter-protest is very quickly formed against these people. Now, sections of these protests and counter-protests turned violent, including one gentleman on the white supremacist side of things taking his Dodge Challenger, plowing through 20 people, injuring 19, severely injuring 5 of those who are still in critical care, and killing 1. So that's where we are.
Eventful weekend, to say the least.
That is a a gross, understating summarization of what happened in Charlottesville this weekend. So now we're going to move into the fallout of that. So first off is that we live in the day of cell phones. So there's tons of video and photos that were taken of this event happening, including a proverbial manhunt for several of the people that were on the side of the white supremacists. Because there is video of them doing the Nazi salute and yelling Heil Victory and all of these different things. Kirk in the chat room says, yeah, they were a bunch of tiki-wielding white supremacists. And by white supremacists, I mean douchebags.
Yep.
You're not wrong. So with that, these people are being identified, which, I mean, on some ways, like, you need to own your own actions. But at the other side, like, I'm not sure I full well agree with people, like, condoning manhunts for these people. Like,
yeah.
I in no way agree with them, but I don't...
Well, I mean, it depends on what kind of manhunt you mean. The manhunt where they figure out who you are and you get fired from your job for having shitty opinions and they don't want you there is a manhunt I'm fine with.
Sure. It just feels like... Because one of the things that I really try to do is try to look at things if these went the other way. Of, let's say that, you know, it was an LGBT protest wanting the legalization of gay marriage or even like cannabis or something like that. And a group of, you know, whoever started, you know, trying to hunt down. I mean, this happens in some countries where they legitimately try and hunt down all the gay people and kill them. Like,
yep. It's happened recently in news. I forget what country it was.
Malaysia?
In Eastern Europe.
I think it was Malaysia.
Mm-hmm. Well, not just Malaysia. There was one in Eastern Europe here recently, if I remember right, that has had a rash of like 30 or something LGBT people being just kidnapped and vanished, if you will.
Now, in the follow-up to that, you have a lot of people defending themselves, although very terribly. So the first one we're going to be talking about in the fallout of this is a man that is shouting angrily at the supremacist rally insists that he is not an angry racist.
Submitted by a concerned Indian guy to R. Not the Onion.
I really...
Where's R. Not the Onion?
It is... So, all of our stuff is pulled from Reddit. R. Not the Onion is... So, you've heard of The Onion, right?
Yes.
The Onion is a
Exactly.
website that runs satirical news articles that aren't true, that are just completely unbelievable. R. Not the Onion is a subreddit dedicated to the idea of these are articles that you would probably see on The Onion that are actually true.
Okay. Yeah, so this should be a joke. It really should, but it's not.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry. Here's the line for me. If you say Sieg Heil, and you appreciate the line that comes from and you support that, you do not get to say you are not an angry racist. And the reason that you are not an angry racist is in spite of the fact that the alt-right is really good at promulgating Holocaust denial. It's really good at it. I've seen it done. I spend way too much time in like all like voice chats and the like. It happened. And despite your dedication, your obsession with proving the thing didn't happen, it happened. That movement did that, and if you're okay with that movement enough to back it, you're literally saying that essentially, yeah, the fact that they killed several million people specifically because of their ethnicity is just, you know, it's just not quite enough to dissuade me. I don't know if you can be if you're not an angry racist, okay, fine, you're a calm racist. What do you fucking do?
Well, and that's like the people that like, or like, you know, because like the swastika, you know, in a day gone by used to mean like hope and eternity and unity and all this stuff. And
it is a symbol that dates back to, you know, Indian symbology.
And in multiple cultures.
It looks like the sun. There's sort of an obvious sense in which it is meant to be vitality, force. Like it's practically Jungian in being an archetypal sort of sacred geometry kind of thing. But you tilt it 45 degrees, and then there you go.
Well, yeah, and it'll never mean that again. Like, I do not understand the people that are like, let's take back the swastika. Like, no, that needs to be a reminder for eternity of that needs to never happen again. Like,
yeah, there are people who can use that symbol, and they use it at the right angle of that, and they use it in a hand because they're chains, or they use it in the religious context it came from. So one of the things we can always remember about the Nazis is that for all of their ostentation towards seriously engaging history, what they really were bad occultists. And the way in which they were bad occultists is in the way that many occultists are bad occultists, in that they take symbols from this or that thing that they like that signifies something they wish they had. They throw it all together and they call it an ideology. It's archetype soup. Blend together a bunch of things to make shit I like. But the result is, in this case, absolute incoherence shit.
Mm-hmm. Like, it just needs to just be what it is. But in this particular case, so this gentleman, who I'm not going to name because I don't want to give him any more credit than he's already gotten, said, I did not expect the photo to be shared as much as it was. I understand the photo has a very negative connotation, but I hope that the people sharing the photo are at least willing to listen, and that I am not an angry racist that they see in the photo. As a white nationalist, I care for all people. We all deserve a future for our children and our culture. White nationalists aren't all hateful. We just want to preserve what we have.
So, can I lay an ideological spiel here because it's relevant?
Go for it.
So, part of my journey in the realm of the alt-right conversation room has lent me this important fact. It is possible to be a nationalist and even an ethnic nationalist and not see your position as inherently detrimental to this or that ethnic group. The point they will make includes something like Japan is de facto an ethno-state. China is de facto an ethno-state. And there exists plenty of these across the world, so why shouldn't it be okay for white people to have one? And on a certain level, by itself does not constitute violence. The violent part comes in where you want to say, I'm going to make my ethno-state right here. Everybody who's not this, right? Like, the reason you could argue for Japan being kind of okay is they just don't let generally large populations from outside in the first place. They've sort of always been one, and they've maintained that position.
Right.
It's an entirely different thing when you're saying, I now have this land, it's now mine. People who are here that I don't want in it, leave.
Yeah.
Take a case that's proximal to this, but difficult. Israel and Palestine. The problem is not that the Israelis want a state. The problem is that Israel, relative to what is present in Palestine, is willing to kick out tens of thousands of people that are already living there in order to create more of a state for itself.
Right, because they want to only include their people.
So, yeah, like the nationalists, the ethno-nationalists can articulate themselves in such a way that they're not directly trying to shoot you in the face. They're just going to have to shoot you in the face. And oh, isn't that sad?
Yeah, that's real sad.
Never underestimate people's capacity to bullshit themselves philosophically.
I'm going to restart the call real quick because our connection is starting to deteriorate even further, and restarting it seems to fix that. So we're just going to reset the call because internet is rude, but luckily it only takes a moment, and normally that resets our quality in such a way that it'll survive a little bit longer.
How are we doing?
You sound great. Significantly better than you did 30 seconds ago.
Excellent.
Yeah, Kirk in the chat room says, we had this whole westward expansion thing in the 1800s. That was the white nationalist movement, and we still have fallout to this day. It's true. Like.
Yeah, we tried it. Manifest Destiny. We this is our land now. Yeah, because I know people who live on reservations who are perfectly okay with an ethno-state. And they're like, yeah, you should have an ethno-state that is grounded in the Volk, which is the folk, and the Germans make use of that in their ideological spiel all the time. And it is not just the Volk, but the Volk and the fatherland. And a lot of them will intermix genetics and a bunch of half-ass, a few grains of truth bullshit science to justify this. And to which I've known people who are like, great, I believe in ethno-states. When are you leaving?
Mm-hmm.
But...
And Jennifer makes another good question. I wonder how it feels for World War veterans to see this. And, like, the other thing is like, this entire thing with Charlottesville is purely, I mean, like, there's a lot of, like, white supremacy and neo-Nazi stuff going on in it, but it's purely fueled by the idea that they wanted to take down a statue of a guy who was the general of the military that was fighting to preserve slavery.
Yeah. Okay. Again, the way they spin themselves is, as some of us here may know, it wasn't fighting to preserve slavery. It was the states' rights of the South to secede whenever they so chose.
Right.
Even though the whole form of it was basically you're only choosing to secede because you're trying to violate the values that we all ostensibly are realizing we violating that you signed on to when you joined. And so Lincoln was like, "Fuck that, you're staying." And it's always fun, for example, to remind either people who are obsessed with the Confederate flag two things. One, that was Southern culture for like 5 years at the most, and if that's your Southern culture, you're being real fucking selective. And two, the actual Confederate flag was a white flag. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to reset the call one more time.
All right.
Because everything hates us. So with that, though, there is two more pieces that we are going to be moving on to for the idea of Charlottesville. There's two more things we want to address of just additional fallout from that. The gentleman who drove his car into the crowd of counter-protesters, killing one, severely injuring 5, and injuring 14 others. He has been identified and arrested, and he has been denied bail. He is on trial for 1 count of second-degree murder, 1 case of hit and run from an accident that caused death, and 3 counts of malicious wounding.
And this was submitted by Goya Bean to Our Politics.
So, you can say First Amendment stuff, freedom of speech, and, say these horrible things, but the moment that you start... it's no different with the liberals that were protesting, Milo or, even Donald Trump or anything like that. That is perfectly fine, but the moment you turn to violence is the moment that everything you are fighting for is now moot.
So the trouble becomes with this ideology. So the funny thing is that when we look at, particularly a lot of the members of Antifa, who aren't just left, but are far left and even communists, is that they have actually already done this before with nationalists. They did it in Germany prior to Hitler's rise. And what they found was that in the course of two sets of street gangs beating each other up, what ultimately came to terms was that the National Socialists were able to win. And so, what we've established here in the United States, and what some of us still believe in, is that if we are actually attempting to debate in the public square, that allowance for wisdom, the truth will out. But somewhere between, I'm going to yell loudly about what I think, and I'm going to take my car, and I'm going to drive it into as many of you as I possibly can, and hopefully I'll kill one of you. Somewhere between that line where we can have a conversation, and that line where we can even treat of each other as other human beings, is crossed.
Yeah. And it's on everyone involved to have that, though. It
is.
I have a friend who is very, very right-leaning, and I'm pretty darn left-leaning, and we are able to have very substantive? Is that a word?
Substantive is a word.
Okay.
Substantial would also be meaning.
Okay. Conversations from almost completely opposite sides, and while neither of us are truly aiming to change one another's minds, it's more of just discussing what's happening. And we almost never agree on anything, but we discuss a good amount of things because we are able to respect each other enough not to just yell at each other, "Screw you, you're wrong."
We can't. The problem here again is, relative to Nazis, for example, my opinion of Nazis can be summed up as, I would love to buy one of those fuck Nazis baseball bats. I would love to. Would I actually go out and start beating people in the head with it unless they did something to somebody? No.
Yeah.
And the simple reason for that is, I can't lay claim to believing in the American truth that has thus far produced the longest-lasting constitutional republic in the history of the world if I suddenly turn around and think, the way to do this is to take this shit into my own hands.
Yeah. Well, at that, we're going to continue to move forward, as we're already at about 44 minutes, so...
4.
Prisoner suicidal 11 years into 10-month jail term.
Submitted by Big Boss 182 to Our World News.
So, this just proves to me that in a lot of ways, legal systems across the world are just kind of messed up.
Yep.
So in 2006, this gentleman was serving a 12-month prison sentence for arson. 11 years later, he is still in jail. While he was in jail, he started causing problems. It seemed like there's no one saying what necessarily caused them, whether it's like mental issues or just because he's crazy or he's upset or angry or he's an aggressive person. But either way, things like trying to harm himself, he set fire to his own mattress in his cell, and all of these were resulting in IPPs, or imprisonment for public protection sentences, and those stacked on top of one another. So that was extending his jail sentence. Now, however, though,
11 years.
Well, here's the problem, though, is in 2012, IPPs were abolished. So they no longer do IPPs. However, there were 3,000 people, both in England and Wales, that were serving sentences purely for IPPs. Because IPPs were abolished, they no longer have a release date.
Oh.
They're just sitting in jail and with no date for when they're going to get out.
You know, there are moments where with the legal system, you have to go, okay, yeah, that's fucked. There are moments of the legal system where you have to go, what the actual fuck? Prisons, we've already known realistically, and anybody who studies the subject, conservative or not, can admit this of themselves. The prison system is literally the best option we have among many shitty options, at its absolute best. So we already know we have to treat these things carefully, but we don't because, you know, so what? We put a few people in forever, you know, just, how do you would think that they would be required to rule on that at abolishing the sentence itself.
Yeah.
How are they not required to rule that?
Don't know. All it tells us is that the Ministry of Justice is working alongside the parole board to try and figure out who needs to be set free and when, but it's taking time.
How about all of them if they have a really bullshit sentence like that?
if they're if they're serving IPP alongside something else, but at this point if they're only serving time on IPPs, like it was abolished in 2012. What is the longest sentence that you can give someone for an IPP? Like, this dude set fire to his own cell and was only sentenced to 10 more months. That was, so, like, 4 years?
Yeah. What do you have to do to get longer?
Yeah. I don't know, but something needs to be addressed there. So, I wish you luck, everybody. I'm sorry.
3.
GoDaddy bans neo-Nazi website The Daily Stormer.
Submitted by FreeSaB1 to Our Technology.
So the Daily Stormer, which is a neo-Nazi website that was originally hosted on GoDaddy, GoDaddy had received lots of criticism for being the host for the Daily Stormer in the past, but after the events in Charlottesville, the Daily Stormer was basically like cheering what happened, all of the violence that happened, and including to the point of like the one person that did die in the accident, a 32-year-old, where'd her name go? I had it all the way up until Heather Heyer was calling her like a fat, childless 32-year-old slut, saying she deserved what happened to her, and like just, yeah, I'm not going to go much past that. And at that point, people are like, whoa, these people are real bad. Like, you should not be condoning someone's death. And GoDaddy then, after that was addressed, said, you have 24 hours to move your site. We don't want you here anymore.
Yep. And of course, GoDaddy is under no obligation whatsoever to serve a given website, as far as I can tell.
No. Well, and what's funny is, even better, they wanted to move to Google. Because they're like, cool, we'll just move over to Google. Well, Google cancels neo-Nazi site registration soon after it was dumped by GoDaddy.
Submitted by Media Woman to Our Technology.
So they tried to move.
No cigar.
Yeah, we'll just go to Google, and Google went, no, you take that out of here. We don't want it either. Good luck.
I mean, I can sincerely hope, because the Daily Stormer is, for the people who don't know, one of the largest hubs for that movement, organization, whatever the fuck you want to call it. So one can only hope that it can't find anywhere to go, because the sooner these people don't have that kind of organization, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
So that seems deserving, and I'm glad that we're in a world where it's past just we want your money. It's like, no, we just don't want anything to do with you. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Yep.
2,
Bruno Mars donates $1 million to help Flint water crisis.
Submitted by Hugo Allen, 77, to Our Music. Here's another good one.
Oh, you mean like positive, happy?
Yeah, like happy rich person does good thing.
Yep. So now, while people are like, but the Flint water crisis is solved, it's not solved. They got moved back over to Detroit water, so they're no longer drinking the horrible, like, nasty water, but they still have a very large case, a huge amount of cases of Legionnaire's disease from people drinking that tainted water beforehand. And in addition, like, there's a water source there that nobody can use because it is now tainted. It needs to be cleaned. So everything is not addressed. This isn't just solved. We found a Band-Aid so that people can have water, but there's still the fallout to deal with. And
Remind me, like, has the water supply itself yet actually been fixed, even?
the one that was tainted, no. They got switched from their water supply to Detroit's water supply.
Okay, I mean, from what I know of Detroit, that's probably not much better, but anything's better than dying from your water.
Yeah. So, with that, Mars recently had a concert in Michigan where all of the money that was made from tickets, including some of his own money, which amounted to $1 million, is being donated to Flint for the pure purpose of trying to solve their water problem.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, the bad part is $1 million on a citywide scale probably won't do as much as we wanted. The good news is that's $1 million more towards a problem that needed fixing than they had, and, you know, hopefully at least the city doesn't have to pay taxes on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, do we have any indication of how much it would take monetarily and time-wise before this gets can be sort of deemed resolved?
I haven't expressly looked into it, but I mean, it's probably a lot.
Yeah. I mean, this is a start. This is a start. Good on Bruno Mars for continuing to be a good guy Mars.
Well, David in the chat room says hopefully they build something with it instead of buying bottled water. They don't have to buy bottled water anymore. They have a clean water supply that's being fed to them from Detroit, but their original water supply should still be fixed. Like that's still an issue that needs to be addressed. Kirk asked, how big is Flint? Flint, Michigan population 2017. Their approximate population
97,386 last year, at least.
So about 100,000, which is substantial.
Yeah, that's a lot of people, and you know, again, it's. I should think that the fixing the mains, the system itself, should probably cost in the tens of millions. But again, this is hella better than nothing, and it's kind of amazing that. Depressingly amazing that this was able to be such a big issue in the news, and it still hasn't actually been fixed, even though it's literally just we need money and we need people working on it.
Kirk approximates that it'd probably be somewhere around like $50 million. And I trust Kirk's approximations because of his profession.
What's he do?
He is... What is it that you do now, Kirk? Like, he was originally like a surveyor, and then he was working with some...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd buy that.
Or maybe he's still doing that? I don't know. He goes and does things and tells people what they need to do whenever they want to build something.
Sounds like a pleasantly authoritative job.
Yeah.
You do this. I will. Good job.
Power to you. Kirk says I make the bad assumption that every city in the lower 48 is bigger than Anchorage. Yeah, and he is a surveyor. So,
One.
Big game hunter trampled to death by elephant in Namibia. Namibia. Words.
Submitted by Bob Cobble to our news. Here's another fucking karma.
Yeah. Karma wins. Karma can always win out in the end if it tries hard enough. In this case, this gentleman was on a private wildlife area approximately 43 miles northwest of the small town of Culkfield, because any of us know where that is. Thanks, independent.co.uk. Anyway, they were attempting to do some big game hunting when the elephant charged them, and the person who was there specifically to do the big game hunting is the only person that was injured.
Well,
And by
then,
injured, I mean killed.
obviously, trampled to death tends to be a fatal condition. Just, I mean, we have few enough of these things. We already almost killed them. Do you really need to go shoot more of them? Is like, what are you gonna do with it? Hang it up on your wall and be like, "Hardar, look at me! I shot something to death once. I used the power of technology that all it was required was to point an object at somebody and pull the trigger. Aren't I just the most? Don't I get out?
I'm so amazing."
You know, there's a saying that Nietzsche didn't say, where he's like, you know, there's a point where when somebody stands in the market and does something to make a point about just how much power and force of will they have, that at some point you have to wonder just how impotent they really are. And I feel like that's the case with people who need to shoot big animals.
Compensating.
Yep.
All right. So now then,
I'm Mr. Meeseeks! Look at me!
Kobe, what did you care about in the last, I don't know, like 6 months?
Well, recently I've been trying to mod Fallout 4. And the thing is, there's about 3 tiers you can do that on. You can either drop a couple textures into the game.
Sure.
You can load up Nexus Mod Manager, which is a really good program, by the way, but not perfect. And you can add in a couple game changes. Or you could be like me and have not played PC games until really actually on PC Master Race until the last couple of years, thanks to your boyfriend. But have played Elder Scrolls games as early as 2007, and for that entire time wanted to mod them, and so decided to get all that pent-up modding out. And so 200 downloads later, and a long-ass load order, you're like, how does the plugin work?
Are you in any way successful?
So I figured out, one thing I'm figuring out is it's actually better to not use Nexus unless you have to. And like, Nexus is good, but the problem is it's not perfect. And mods that change the same things in multiple ways, well, you know, it's an architecture issue, basically. Because
Sure.
like they'll all override each other and affect each other, and you might want these textures but not these, and these effects on this faction but not these. And just because I want my bright pink Hello Kitty power armor does not mean that I want every single texture in the game colored pink.
Well, and that's like my friend Bryce spent a very long time modifying Skyrim, and very often though, because I mean, most of the people that make mods, they're not like truly professional programmers, right? Like,
No.
and so a lot of the times they would make one and get it to work and work well, but as soon as you wanted to do another one, like they'd cross over in a weird way and it would just make the whole game just break.
Well, and some of the mods people do, like even professional programmers or not, some of the mods people do are really impressive. Like one basic one you can drop in for Fallout is one that literally takes Bethesda shittily optimized all of the textures in the game. So one guy literally took every single texture in the entire game and just upped the sharpness and clarity a little bit. It was already there. Makes the whole game look better. It's a 9 gigabyte download, but it exists.
Well, and that's probably what it is. I mean, trying to save space.
Yeah, space is an issue. Then, you know, impressive ones. Some people will literally overhaul entire game mechanics. The amount of work people. So last time I was on the Nexus, and I haven't gotten to mod Skyrim, but Skyrim is, I believe, one of the most modded games on there. Period.
Probably.
Skyrim had 47,000 files available on it, and that's a number.
Mm-hmm.
So Bethesda makes their games to be modded, and TLDR people like it, but it's a bitch to learn, and I barely know what I'm doing. I'm no computer expert, but that's what I've been That's what I've been caring about.
Fun. I have cared about a case that I don't really care enough about. It just really entertains me. And this is regarding, if you haven't heard, Taylor Swift, because she's Taylor, was in a legal dispute with a DJ who goes by the name of David Mueller. And what this wasn't regarding is that she had made the claim that during a public photo shoot, in which, it was one of those things that you see of, like, they're standing in a room and you come in, take a picture, and then they shoo you out so that the next people in line can come in, take a picture, shoo you out, that whole thing. Well, apparently, while him and his wife came to get a picture with Taylor Swift, he apparently groped her rear. In which, she didn't make a huge deal out of it. She's just like, hey, some dude just groped me. That's not okay. I would like them removed, is essentially what it was. And so her security detail at the event reviewed the footage, figured out who it was, and just removed him. But apparently, someone else saw this happen, and they made it a little bit more public, and it hurt his reputation pretty substantially. So he was trying to sue her for defamation, right? For destroying his career. Well, she sued him back, basically saying, I'm suing you instead. I'm going to countersue you over the action that you are now upset about. And if it's in my favor, I want $1.
I love those sort of like on principle cases.
So after nearly 4 hours of deliberation, the jury ruled in her favor, so he has to pay her $1.
Well, literally, how much self-control does it take to not grab someone's ass?
You should ask our president.
He wouldn't know. Oh.
Well, and the most damning thing in this case was, so he walked up with her to take a picture, right?
Right.
In the picture, you can't actually see hand on bum, but there is, no question that that's where the hand is. You're like, oh.
Right. It's a arm goes behind, there's, trajectory speaks to us.
Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to bring that to light of, one, you are a scumbag human being, Mr. Mueller, and I love it when people just, she could have, taken a ton of money from him, right? But she's
I mean, she has to be thinking, I've already taken his career, his money won't make me feel better, but making him pay me will make me feel better.
A whole $1. Write me that check. Do it. Write me a check for $1. All 100 cents of it.
I'm reminded of that programming book that if you ever sent in a correction that hadn't been done, the authors of the programming book will actually pay you 35 cents. And a bunch of the people that have ever gotten those checks have just framed them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot of the times with white hat hackers, the people that will try to hack systems for the sake of finding vulnerabilities to help protect people. A lot of the times those companies will be like, "Oh, thanks for that. Here's a check for $15,000," and they're just like, charity. I do this.
Yeah, or what they do a lot of the time when they do go in and affect something because they can for white hacking is they'll take out a really cute number. Just somehow related to the company or what it is. Oh, you have 17 board members. $1 from each of you.
Yeah. So, either way, I'm glad to see this happen. I mean, this is, this is a good example of why you address these things immediately. Comparing it to our earlier case regarding the military rape case, if she would have addressed it immediately, and I mean back in 1986, maybe not, but in today's day and age, it's addressed much more quickly.
Yep, thankfully.
So, either way, that's it, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get ready to get out of here. Please remember that you can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are at iReaditCast. If you'd like to help support the show, you can either share us on social media or support us financially at patreon.com/dailyinternet, as many of others have done, and I appreciate you so much. Otherwise, if you'd like to follow me, I am at Schwahn Michael on social media. Kobe, if you want to disclose anything, you can, but that's purely up to you.
I'm good for the moment.
Okay, he's here.
I exist.
He's a thing. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. If you have a story that you'd like us to talk about, even if it wasn't terribly recent, please send it in, or just let us know your thoughts on the show. Send it to our email inbox, which is feedback.ireddit@gmail.com, or you can call and leave us a voicemail at 508-738-2278. Everybody, that is your 332nd dose of the internet. I am Michael Schwahn.
And I'm Kobe Boatwright.
And please remember, everybody,
Don't get eliminated!
Have a good day, everyone.